This room is the main room of the downstairs. People call this the safe side, and they call this the safe room. And my desk is right over there behind the camera. Looking at this always reminds me of a story that happened in the first couple of years that we were doing this. We had a group come in, and their group was kind of spread out. A couple of them were from Fort Worth, and one was from Arlington, and one was from Houston. Maybe two of them were from Houston. Anyway, they came in, and they had a radio broadcast thing at the time, and they all had these gorgeous pendulums that they would use to communicate. And they had some dowsing rods, but the pendulums that they had were like precious stones, and not just on the pendulum end, but also on the end that you hold. They had all these precious stones, and they were just, you could tell these were not cheap pendulums. They all had them. But this one girl, hers was just gorgeous. I loved it. And she used it all night. It was always either in use or it was in her pocket. And when it came time for them to leave, it was probably, I don't know, 4 in the morning. It wasn't daylight yet. And she couldn't find her pendulum. And we searched the house for the pendulum, and there wasn't nearly as much furniture here then as there is now. And we searched and searched. We were taking, pillows up and cushions out of the couch and turning things over, and we just couldn't find her pendulum anywhere. And the next morning, when daylight came, I was even out searching the street near where the cars had been. I thought maybe it had dropped when she was loading or something. No pendulum. And I forgot about it because things like that do happen around here. So a couple weeks later, Jimmy was here, and he and I were sitting in the living room while another team was off investigating. And we were just talking, and I looked around and I said, "My blanket's gone." He said, "Yeah, I know, I haven't seen it." I said, "No, it was probably here. Somebody probably just grabbed it and took it over, because they got cold." He said, "No, I don't think it's here." And I forgot about that because, I forget things easily. So, like 2 days later, I get a phone call from the group leader of the ones with the pendulums. And she said, "I know why they took the pendulum." And I'm trying to remember what she's talking about, but then it's like, okay. And she said, okay. And she called the name of one of the girls who lived in Arlington. She said she was unpacking her equipment to load up for another investigation. She found your blanket. So she called me and asked if I could bring it up next time I come because she knew I was coming back up. I said, okay. She said as soon as she made arrangements to get that blanket back to Hill House, the pendulum showed up on the desk of the girl in Houston. Now that's who the pendulum belonged to. She had come all the way from Houston, and that pendulum, boom, was on her desk as soon as they made arrangements to get the blanket back to me. That's a pretty cool story all by itself because it involves so many people. But here's the even more cool part. The blanket is just a cheap, I think it's a Walmart blanket, but it has an eagle on it. I don't know if you can see the whole thing, but I keep this blanket on the couch for people that get cold. And I've had people pick this blanket up in the middle of summertime because they just got chilled, which if you're into this kind of thing, you understand that. And if you're not into this kind of thing, you wouldn't believe it anyway. So this particular blanket, my late husband died of cancer. And when he died, he was so skinny from the chemo and the radiation that he was always freezing. And he had pneumonia. And right like the month before he died, somebody bought him this blanket because eagles were special to him because he had been in the Marines in Vietnam. So this was essentially his blanket. And when it disappeared, one of their pendulums disappeared. And when the blanket was returned, their pendulum was returned. You do the math.